The morning Nora stopped answering her phone, the lake was the color of pewter, and a single loon called out from somewhere she could not see. She had driven up the night before, arriving after dark, not bothering to unload the car properly, just pulling out the sleeping bag and the box with the coffee things and leaving the rest. She had slept in her clothes on the narrow cot her uncle had built 30 years ago from pine he milled himself, and she had slept without dreaming, which was the first time in longer than she could name. The cabin sat at the edge of a small lake in the northern part of the state, a place her family had used summers when she was a child, and then gradually stopped using, the way families gradually stop doing everything that requires effort and yields only quiet. There was no internet. The electricity ran to a single bulb overhead and to the pump for the well. The outhouse stood 20 feet into the trees, and the trees were very tall, and the outhouse smelled of pine and cold earth, which is not an unpleasant smell. Nora was a technical writer. She wrote instructions for medical devices, which meant she spent her days making the complicated legible for people who were frightened and needed clarity. She was good at it. She had been good at it for 22 years, and something about being good at something for 22 years had made her feel that the thing she was good at was the same as the thing she was. Her sister had called 3 times in the past week. Her editor had called twice. A man she had been seeing carefully and without much conviction had sent 11 text messages in 4 days, each one a small test she was failing by not responding. She had turned the phone face down on the passenger seat sometime around the 2nd hour of driving and had not looked at it since. She made coffee on the propane burner and carried it outside and sat on the dock in the grey morning. The wood was soft under her and faintly damp. The loon called again, closer now. And then she saw it, dark and purposeful, moving along the far shore without any apparent effort, as though it were being drawn by something beneath the water. She thought, I have not sat still in years, not sat still the way she was sitting still now, without a podcast threading into her ears, without her eyes moving across a screen, without the sensation that stillness was merely the pause between obligations. She had been filling every quiet with sound the way you fill a crack in the wall before company comes, not because the crack is dangerous, but because you have grown ashamed of it. The days passed in a way she had not expected. She had imagined solitude would feel like an absence, a room with the furniture removed, and she would pace the perimeter of it restlessly until she could return to her life. Instead, it felt like a room she had not known was there. Each morning, the lake showed her a different face. Silver, then bronze, then, on the 3rd day, a luminous green so deep it seemed to come from below the surface rather than above it. She walked the trail around the water and learned its character, the muddy inlet where the herons stood, the granite outcropping where she could sit and see the whole of it at once. She began to write things down. Not the medical instructions, not the careful, legible prose of her profession, but other things, the way the light moved through the birches in the afternoon, the sound the pines made in the wind, which was not one sound but many sounds layered, each tree speaking slightly out of turn with the others. She wrote about her mother, who had also loved this place and had died 6 years ago, and whom Nora had been too busy to grieve properly, or perhaps had been grieving in the way she knew how, which was to keep moving. On the 5th morning, she found a spider's web strung between 2 dock posts, hung with dew, each drop holding a tiny perfect image of the lake and the trees and the sky. She crouched there for a long time, looking at all those small worlds suspended in the silk, and felt something in her chest ease open like a door that has been stuck for a long time and finally yields to a steady pressure. She was not lonely. That surprised her most of all. She had always assumed that solitude and loneliness were different names for the same condition, that to be alone was to be bereft of something necessary, but she was more present to herself here than she had been in any crowded room in recent memory. She could feel her own thinking, the actual texture of it, the way you can feel the grain of wood when you run your hand along it slowly. On the 7th day, she picked up her phone. She held it in both hands for a moment, feeling its familiar weight, and then she set it on the table inside and went back out to the dock. She brought her notebook. She sat with her legs hanging over the water, which was still and dark and smelled of cold and green things growing, and she began to write something she did not yet have a name for, only the first sentence, which was, "I think I have been living beside my life without knowing it." The loon called from across the water. She wrote the sentence again, slowly, pressing each word into the page, and the morning opened around her like a hand.